Over to France now, where the government has halted counter-terrorism cooperation with Mali. It also declared two Malian embassy officials in Paris persona non grata. This follows Bamako's arrest of a French intelligence agent last month. The man, allegedly an intelligence agent, was arrested alongside two Malian generals and was accused of participating in a plot to destabilize Mali. France dismissed the allegations, calling them unfounded. The latest move to suspend counter-terrorism cooperation further severs relations between Mali and its former colonial ruler. Mali expelled French troops in 2022 and earlier this year deported the French ambassador to the Sahelian nation. Now we're joined by Ade Darami, a political analyst from the Banjul, Gambia. Welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us here on Africa Live. First and foremost, what are your thoughts on the latest France-Mali standoff? Let's begin there.
Yeah, well, it seems to be the latest in a series of standoffs because for the last few years, ever since the military junta came into operation in Mali, they seem to be having one standoff with France after another, and this is just the very latest. And it's really a sign of how France's influence is shrinking in Mali, and one has to say amongst its other former colonies. The arrest of the intelligence officer is just the latest flashpoint, really. They kind of kicked France out of the picture. They brought in Russian. Everybody is aware of the Wagner mercenary groups that were brought in by Mali. And ostensibly, this junta and other juntas in the Sahel region took over with the promise to their citizens that they would actually be in a better position now to push back against jihadist violence. But they woefully failed on that particular score. So what's happening now between Mali and France is just the latest, because it seems quite odd that these countries had quite a relationship with France for many years, even after they gained independence, and yet it has soured really, really badly and just seems to be getting worse rather than better.
All right, let's talk about security, always a hot button topic in that region. What will be the impact of the suspension of counter-terrorism cooperation to security in the Sahel region and, of course, Mali?
Yeah, it's a major setback because for all the kind of anti-French sentiment that was abroad in the Sahel region, actually quite a few people felt that the mere presence of French troops or even French cooperation, even if their troops are not there, was something that would help. Because this goes beyond boots on the ground. It's also about sharing intelligence and about coordinating. Using satellite imagery and all these sorts of things. But once that is out of the picture, then of course you create a vacuum during, these extremist groups will actually flourish and they will exploit that vacuum. And so really, it's not just Mali's security, it's the security of the whole Sahel region that then becomes at risk as a result of this sort of suspension, because they do need to cooperate even if they're no longer on the kind of friendly relations that they were. Because for France and many other European countries, the reason why they help is a slightly selfish reason. When there's instability in these regions, a lot of people, because of their connections and their links to France as a former colony, this is where they run to. And so, they'd rather these countries were stable and people stayed there, because, of course, we know how, sort of right-wing groups in Europe, France including, have exploited the kind of what they would call an influx of things. So it's quite impactful, such a suspension. Nobody benefits from it. And in fact, you would imagine that there'll be sort of diplomatic channels behind the scenes trying to mend fences to make sure that cooperation is reestablished as quickly as possible.
Well, in light of what you've said and alluded to about the whole region, Ade, how do you see French relations developing further in West Africa, especially in the Sahel region?
France, like many former colonies and colonizers, they never seem to realize that, when they were the colonizers, there was always a kind of undercurrent of resentment of them being the colonizers. And I think they've been quite shocked at the reaction, the rejection. And of course, the rejection we've seen in the wider Sahel goes beyond just that of France, because of course all these are former French colonies. It's also almost a rejection of the West as well. And, these countries are now turning to China, they're now turning to Russia more and more. And so, of course, France is losing ground, and it is a shock to them. And they're trying to mend fences. They're trying to see if they can come back and gain some ground. They realize that they probably lost the kind of status that they once had in this region. But the fear for them is that it will be lost to such an extent that Russia, China will gain ground, and that France will never be able to kind of get back to even close to the sorts of relationship and influence it had in the region. And sometimes people said that that influence was way too much. And of course, now they are at a very high risk of being completely sidelined in the region, and that to them is very scary.